Color theory is pretty daunting. If you're anything like I was, you'll want to hiss and cower at those dreaded words. But I'm here to hopefully explain all the basics in a way that we can understand. To put it simply, color theory is the study of how colors interact with each other and how we perceive them in different contexts. I'm going to explain a few basic categories of color theory that I use to create a harmonious color palette. This is a color wheel. A color wheel is, well, it's a wheel of colors. It's usually used to show colors and their relationships to each other. First of all, there's three different types of colors that we can see on this color wheel: primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. The traditional primary colors are red, yellow, and blue. However, there have been some studies that show magenta, yellow, and cyan are the real primary colors, but that's a whole new topic for a whole different day. I'll just stick to the classic red, yellow, blue for now. So our primary colors are red, yellow, and blue, which makes our secondary colors purple, green, and orange. Secondary colors are a result of mixing equal parts of two primary colors. And tertiary colors are basically those little colors in between. They're a result of mixing a primary color with a secondary color. So that includes red purple, green blue, or yellow green. You don't really need to know about the specifics for those though. Now we can talk about how we can use a color wheel to find the relationships between two colors. The two main relationships I'm going to talk about today are analogous and complementary. I'll demonstrate these on two characters from my upcoming webcomic. Starting with analogous colors. Analogous colors are three colors that are side by side on the color wheel. So I'm picking yellow-orange, yellow, and orange, but you could pick red, red-orange, red-violet, blue, blue-violet, blue-green, green, yellow-green, yellow. Any of them work. As long as they're next to each other on the color wheel, they are analogous colors. I'll demonstrate this color palette on my character Marie, since one of her outfits fits into this style of coloring. I'm using yellow as my base, and I'm going to pick orange and orangey brown colors to go with it. When done right, an analogous color palette can look really nice, and it gives a flow to your art that you don't really get with a mixed palette. I love how the end result turns out. I like to use a color to overlay or multiply on top of my already finished drawing, so that everything looks a little more cohesive and like it's underneath the same light. I'll shut up for a minute here while I color this in. I actually love how this turned out. It was my first time creating her color palette, and I wanted to do it on this video so that I could show you guys my process and how it would turn out using color theory. But yeah, that's how I create an analogous color palette. Now onto complementary colors. I'll demonstrate with my next character, Jade. How do you find complementary colors though? Well, the easiest way would be to grab a color wheel and pick your main color. I'm choosing purple for my base. Now, to put it simply, your complementary color is going to be whatever is opposite to that. For me, that's going to be yellow. You can find it just by drawing a straight line through the color wheel. Red and green are also complementary, as well as blue and orange. Now, despite this character's name being Jade, her color palette for the first chunk of the series is going to be mostly purple and yellow. So first I'll color in her dress and any other main details with that purple color. And then I'm going to go in with the details and accents, like the jewelry with this vibrant yellow. Something you can do to make your complementary color pop even more is to have your main color be a little darker and desaturated, and then to make the accent color extremely bright to draw attention. Such a small detail goes such a long way, and I personally love using complementary colors to catch my viewer's eye or to make it clash a little sometimes even. I'm also using the same trick I used on the other color palette, but instead of overlaying with an orange, I'm going to overlay with a purple or maybe even a blue to just make it look a little more of that purpley color there. So here we can see how using this type of color relationship for a color palette can look really interesting and pleasing to the eye. Obviously all of these little yellow details are popping, and the purple just looks really nice with it as well because they of course complement each other. It's just a great coloring technique. So now I wanted to talk about color harmony. Colors that look good together create what's called color harmony. When a color palette looks like it all belongs together, under the same light, very cohesive, and it doesn't clash. Here are some really simple things that I do all the time to make sure my color palette has color harmony. To start off, I usually desaturate my colors. Of course, this doesn't always apply, as some art styles are tailored to super saturated and busy color palettes, but I'd say for my type of art, and for a lot of art, this kind of color palette is not what you'd be going for. A lot of things in nature aren't typically neon. So yeah, to start, I usually desaturate or deepen my chosen colors a little, and then I'll pick a color like blue or orange for the overlay, depending on whether my palette is cool toned or warm toned, or whether I want it to look more cool or warm toned. I like to use blue or orange because they're typically the most common light source. Of course I deviate from that, and I like adding a little variety to my types of lightings for my drawings, but most of the time, I'll just use a blue or an orange color. So this color palette I want it to be a little warmer, so I've picked orange and I'm just going to set it to an overlay and then lower the opacity on that a little bit. Sometimes depending on my art I'll use a multiply layer or a soft light layer, but sticking to an overlay layer just for your general color palette should work just fine. This is such a quick and easy way to make the colors look like they're in the same environment and less like I picked them out while I was blindfolded. I use this trick almost whenever I'm making an art piece, unless I'm making something that I think would look better a little more vivid or under a different lighting like red or purple or green or something. Finally, on to my last point, color language and color psychology. Colors can subconsciously represent or provoke different feelings and emotions in the viewer. For example, red represents danger, intensity, or anger. It can evoke panic or urgency. That's why stoplights are red, and that's why in movies and TV shows, during the really intense scenes, the lighting might turn red. That's why horror and action contains a lot of red symbolism. Red can also symbolize passion or love. Blue tends to be the opposite, where it brings a sense of calm and peacefulness. That's why hospitals are usually filled with blue, as a way to try and bring some peace to such a stressful or scary environment. Though with that being said, blue can also be used to indicate tension or loneliness in scenes like these. The color yellow can symbolize happiness and energy. Green can portray guilt or envy or growth, depending on how it's used. White can mean purity and innocence, or cleanness and something sanitary. And black can mean elegance or sinisterness, which doesn't sound like a real word, but apparently it is. Color psychology can help you pick a background color or lighting color or even just your general color palette for your art if you're drawing a scene in which you want to push a certain emotion to the viewer. For this nature drawing that I'm showing in the background, I actually went with an analogous color palette using some green, yellow, and some yellowy green. And I picked those colors because I wanted to portray growth, rest, and just a very lively forest and naturey kind of area. But the main feeling I was trying to push here was just that feeling of rest and peace and calmness, which I think I really captured with this color palette. I don't know, you can let me know in the comments, but yeah. This is all what I wish someone had told me when I was still learning how to color in. I still am, and I still always will be learning how to draw and color better. But I hope this helped someone out there to just maybe grasp color theory a little easier, because it took me a while and it's honestly not as terrifying or as intimidating when you actually start learning it. Let me know if there's anything else you want to see from me or anything else you'd like to hear me explain. Happy drawing!